What's going on, guys? It's Ragavan here, and welcome to week 3 of the Summer Showdown predictions. It's the last week of the qualifiers this week. We're going to into Knockout Sunday. Um, I might do a video on Knockout Sunday. I never usually do enough videos because it's predicting 4 teams, essentially, that are going to go through to the actual tournament and shit. But yeah, we're going to give you our thoughts on these games. There's a lot of games, and remember, it will start on Thursday this week. It's not Friday because obviously knockouts are happening on the Sunday. So we have a full schedule this week because last week there were less 8-pack games. But starting off on the Thursday, we have the Atlanta Rain taking on London Spitfire. Um, London have looked very good recently, but Atlanta have looked better. They've 3-0'd the Washington Justice, who then went in 3-0 Mayhem, but that's different. But yeah, the Atlanta have looked really good, and their tank line has really come together. They're just working together really well. Massa has really put in some work on the map recently, and I just think that they have an overall stronger team and a better team chemistry at the moment than London do. As much as I hate to say it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can give credit where credit is due to London. Obviously, they've been giving teams a run for their money as of late, at least, especially in that shot game week 1, and even a little bit in that Paris game, even though they only took a map. It wasn't like it was a far stretch for them to take a second from from Paris, but also Paris has looked very strong in general. Um, as for Atlanta, I don't think this team's quite on their roll yet. They're getting there, especially after last week and seeing what they did against both Washington and Dallas. Even though they lost to Dallas, they still gave Dallas a run for their money, which I don't think anybody was expecting. So I don't see this kind of going either way. I think this definitely goes to Atlanta. It just depends on what London do we see. Do we see a London from the past couple of months, or do we see this new version of the Spitfire that looks like they're kind of finding their footing finally?
I think I think London are gonna go 1-0 up. They're gonna take the opening control map. They seemed really strong in control, especially that first control map. They have good synergy, especially with Blase and on the May. You get good combos going with Morphic and Blase. You got Sparku going in on the hit scan. And when he's hitting, he's getting a lot of picks that are really crucial in those team fights. And I think they know what they're doing on control now enough to make this a 3-1, but I don't know necessarily how good they are. Because you look at them on maps like Assault or Push Cart, or they never finish the map, which is something they need to work on at the moment. And that's why they're not taking these extra maps. But control at least seems pretty strong for them, so I think this is going to be a 3-1.
I think so too. I think London has the opportunity to take a map off of Atlanta, especially if Atlanta comes out quiet.
Yeah. So, next map, we have Boston Uprising taking on Houston Outlaws. Houston have looked very strong this cycle. I mean, they've looked strong this season. They've 3-1 to the Shock, which was the rematch everybody been looking for, and especially those two teams have been hyping up. But equally,
Hmm.
Boston have looked very strong recently. Their stand one has been really good on the Reinhardt. You got Punk, who's been really good on the Diva. Mukibushi has been a really good addition to the lineup. And Valentine, they have a lot of good team members who have been putting in the shifts, but I think their roadblock is going to be Houston. This Houston has been rolling through this West region so far.
Yeah, and it's not like we haven't seen Boston do well, especially against those top teams. I mean, obviously last cycle they made knockouts and they put up a fight in knockouts too. It wasn't like a quiet sort of disappearance by Boston during the knockouts, but I think the one big thing that kind of turns me off from them really doing anything against Houston this week is the fact that they dropped a map to Vancouver, who hadn't won a map all season,
Yeah.
and suddenly Boston's dropping a map to Vancouver.
And it's not even like it was a control map where maybe they had good ult cycles for it and just kept control. They fully stopped them on I believe it was Hollywood. Before they could even get to the second point, they just they 2-1 them, which was insane for a team like Vancouver to just full hold them near enough. So I it's hard. I was thinking 3-0, but I think Boston could take them up maybe. But
I'm still thinking 3-0, but I see where you're coming from with Boston taking a map because Boston isn't like a go down quietly type of team anymore like they were
no,
the past couple of cycles, especially that first cycle where they were very much a go down quietly and just kind of let the upper echelon teams take a free win and walk away. But I think Houston proved themselves again during that shock game, and I think they keep proving themselves to the point where I think it's a no-brainer that Houston is should be the first seed. Unfortunately, they're not because of how tournament points are handed out and the fact that Dallas has made 2 finals.
yeah.
But I very much see them just kind of hitting Boston in the face and moving on
I
here.
think I'm gonna go 3-0. I think this is 3-0.
Yeah. Though I will say, maybe expect a sleepy Houston team because they're looking forward to the match the next day against Dallas, where
Yes.
they're not prepared for Boston yet because they've been focusing too heavily on how are we going to counter that Dallas attack,
I think
and they just sort of come out and look a little like they're experimenting with things first.
I think another thing you gotta take into account with these Houston games are these are all being played in Texas. Like these are homestands games this weekend for
Right.
Houston. So they're gonna have the crowd there, they're gonna feel the energy of the crowd, and you know what that does for any sports team, no matter if it's esports or sports, there is that home field advantage that will always play into effect.
Right.
So I think 3-0 is what I'm gonna go for. Moving over to the East region, we have the Spark and the Excelsior, which is actually a repeat of the knockouts from the summit from June Joust, where the Excelsior shut up the Spark and won 3-1. The way Excelsior have looked, especially losing to Charge, though, I don't think they'll do it again. I think that was just because, oh, we made knockouts, let's give this our best shot and let's see how far we can go. They made the tournament. This is
Right.
a straight up this is just a qualifier. And I think Spark are going to be hungry for this win after losing that game and not making the June Joust when they probably should have. So
Right.
I think I'm gonna go 3-1 to the Spark for this one.
I think I'm going to go exactly the same. And I'll say it now because I don't know if we're gonna say it any later, but I think this is a match that you should look at if you've been following APAC at all, because I think this is gonna be one of the deciding games as to do the Excelsior take that 4th seed, do the Spark take that 4th seed, or do Chengdu take that 4th seed?
Yeah, I think especially now this next match is also gonna be big in that decided because you got the Chengdu Hunters taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. Now my prediction we won't talk about that. They did not win last week, but I
No.
think the Fusion stand more of a chance of winning this game than they did against the Dragons. And keep in mind, yes, it was a 3-0, but they did put up a fight against the Dragons, even though they got completely shut out on Volskaya. They had a really good showing on Control. They had really good showings on 2CP. So it wasn't a complete shutout 3-0. It was still competitive. So I think if
Right.
they can take that energy and bring it against a Chengdu team who is down in the dumps at the moment, they've had moments of brilliance, but they've only seemed to be able to beat these bottom echelon teams. Whereas the Fusion have proven that they can beat both ends of the spectrum on their day, especially now this team is full strength. We got Funny Astro, who actually looked really good on Lucio. EQL hasn't looked that great. I don't think he's found what
I don't think he's
DPS.
found his stride yet,
No. So I
but
think
he's getting
I think they need to start Carpe and Rascal for these last ones to make sure they make these knockouts. You can experiment,
right.
sure. first week, yeah, they can experiment with EQ, give him game time, give him more comfortable. But when it comes
I
down
think
to
we
this,
experiment on Saturday.
hmm, oh,
Maybe.
maybe. So I'm going to go. I think Fusion win this. But I think this is going to be a 3-2 to the Philadelphia Fusion.
I'm okay with that. I think Philly has found their because these teams both run very, very opposite ends. It seems every cycle where run one is uh sort of very much on a cold streak and the other one's on a hot streak. And I think that Chengdu is currently on their cold streak, so I think Philly has this one and can just kind of take it.
Yeah, but you never count out the Chengdu Hunters. I mean, sure, they've had a lot of problems, especially with the hit scan roll and their tanks. Obviously, Elsa just retired, so they're gonna have to put Late Young back in. He didn't look very good on Wrecking Ball, so it's going to be interesting to see how the Chengdu Hunters come up. Maybe they promote another person from their contenders team. They just haven't really found that a stable lineup, and the fact that they keep making these wholesale swaps in between maps, it's not really helping them get that team chemistry down that they should be having. And Fusion just seem to have. I mean, these players have played together before for the most part, and they know how to
Yeah.
play off of each other. Whereas Chengdu don't seem to as much at the moment.
And even if some of those Philly guys don't know how to play off other people, they've been in the league long enough that they've adapted very well. Case in point, Rascal.
Yeah. Alright, so I don't think we need to talk about this last one at all.
No, no.
You want if this is the encore, you're not gonna get any.
Unfortunately, you're not going to get any coins.
Yeah,
I don't think it is. I think Chengdu and Philly is the encore, or Spark Excelsior.
yeah, hopefully.
I don't remember.
Alright, so moving back over to the West region, um, Spitfire fans are gonna look at this and think this is going to could be a win, and I would agree with them to an extent. But Washington have been up and down. They're 1-1. Obviously they beat the Mayhem, but who hasn't beaten the Mayhem at the top end of the table at the moment? And they lost to the Rain 3-1. So
Good luck.
I I think
Yeah.
if London can come out like they did against the Shark and take it all the way, I think London can squeak this a 3-2.
I
Um,
could see that.
but it's
It's going to depend on the Washington that we see. Do we see the 3-0 Mayhem Washington, or do we see the 3-0 Atlanta Washington?
yeah. I think if London can target fire down their DPS line and isolate, if they can isolate players well enough, which I mean, with players like Sparker who can get those easy pickoffs, if they're like out of position who can exploit obvious errors, which Washington have been known to make at times, it will be close. Um, I'm talking around this, and it's obvious
Right.
as a fan. I'm 3-2 Spitfire. I don't care if I lose this one. I'm going with that.
I think I'm going to go with the same thing, just because I think we're going to see more of that Atlanta Washington this, not even just this week, just that day maybe,
Yeah, please,
because
please.
they seem to like to ride the momentum of a loss, where they kind of set a fire under their own ass after they lose, and then they win the next game.
Exactly. So, moving on to the next game, we have the Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Toronto Defiant. Um, Gladiators have been the Gladiators.
Yeah,
They lost to the Paris Eternal and then they beat the Shock in the same weekend. God knows how you managed that one, but um,
you
they've
just do.
and then they're coming up against the Toronto Defiant team who they they beat the Mayhem, which nobody's expecting them to, but again, nobody's expecting the Mayhem to come out like they did. And who was the other team that they beat? I believe it was also another bottom tier team that they beat, or a
I
mid
can
table
look.
team. Whereas the Gladiators have been having this,
Vancouver
yeah. So they've not exactly had the hardest route to go to a no. Whereas the Gladiators have
mm,
had a Paris team that's looked really good, and
and
the Shock.
Shock.
I feel like the Gladiators are going to be up for this more than Toronto, even though Toronto could be very up for this because this could be the first time that they could make knockouts. I just think that the Gladiators are gonna get together. I mean, we've all seen what Moth can do. We've all seen what Space and their tank line can do. Bird Ring is Bird Ring. Kevster, Mirror, they've looked really good interchangeably on the DPS line.
Yeah,
But then Toronto's DPS line, Hisu, Aspire, Logic, if they ever play him again. the,
that
the,
man is a poor benchman at this point with Hisu and Aspire.
yeah, I think what LA really need to do is isolate Toronto's DPS line, and they've essentially shut down any offensive presence that Toronto may have.
Yeah, if they take out Aspire, I think there's well, even Hisu, but especially Aspire with how Aspire has looked these past couple of weeks, even just being on a 30-day.
I think, especially having a good diva player like Space on your team, I feel like he can isolate down any hit scan that they want to choose to play. Because obviously you've got the defense matrix, you just ram them down with the defense matrix and take them off the high ground or just pick them off. They have the players, especially even though they even have Birdring, who's arguably one of the best hit scans in the league at the moment,
Yeah.
to do it. So they have the tools to do it, and I think they will. I think Toronto could sneak a map. They seem to have been able to sneak control maps recently, in losing games. So Gladiators never make it easy for themselves. So I'm gonna go 3-1 to the Gladiators.
Yeah, that's what I went. I went 3-1 Glads. Though for me, as a Shock fan, this is a game I need the Gladiators to lose.
Oh,
It's not gonna happen.
it's Joe's a Toronto fan on Friday.
Yeah,
All right, moving on to the double points game, and oh boy, this is going to be played in front of both Dallas and Houston fans. So obviously, they're from the same state. So
this is a big game.
this is a very big game, possibly one of the biggest games in West all season. I'll say it. Obviously Dallas have had Houston's number this entire season, but Dallas have looked shaky in the Summer Showdown. They went 3-2 against the Mayhem, who have looked awful. They've
Yeah.
went 3-2 against the Rain, who have looked better, but still they're not winning these decisively like they have been in past months. And Dallas have been known to go through. They've gone 3-1 every single cycle. They've lost one game at least every single time.
Hmm.
And I think this is going to be that game. I'm gonna say I think the Houston Outlaws are going to finally do it. Uh, they have to eventually, right? Especially in front of the Houston fans. Surely.
Yeah. I think the the big thing you have to look at is I think more Western teams are starting to figure out Dallas really well and know how to counter whatever they bring out.
Now, the question is, do Dallas finally play Pine in this game?
Probably not.
Will Pine never make an appearance? I swear he was in Dallas. There was like stuff about him being in Dallas during the June Joust. And he played in the Widowmaker tournament, so and during the tournament. So what would he ever play? We don't know. He could play here. He could be a good matchup for who are the Houston Outlaws? Who's their hit scan? It's Happy, yeah.
Happy.
He could be a good like for Happy if he comes out strongly. But if I don't think the Lexus are gonna do them very well against if Happy is popping off.
Yeah.
So
I yeah, I see this going to Houston because they got to get one off of Dallas eventually.
I think this is still. I think this would be a 3-2.
Yeah.
That seems to be Dallas's way of doing things. They've never made it easy for themselves, and I feel like this is gonna finally backfire against them, and it's gonna be 3-2 Houston. So
Mhm.
make sure you watch this game if you're able to. It's going to be very good, especially with both sets of fans there. Oh,
Exactly.
it's gonna feel like what Overwatch League used to feel like before the funny pandemic happened. I can't say what it's called because YouTube might shut me down, but yeah.
UC will be like, no, no. You thought.
All right, so second double points game. This one's a little easier to get right. I feel like, even though actually,
It could go either way.
especially because of New York failed fusion in the June Joust.
Yeah.
But I feel like this full strength fusion team is a lot better now. And I feel like they're more experienced in the league and they know how to isolate some of these rookie players. Especially if they isolate Jonak, who is essentially the leader of that team, it's
And
going
it's
to
all downhill, yeah.
yeah. But they're Kalios played this weekend. I believe he has to, right? Because they could play Bianca, but I feel like they'd want to play him for that synergy, right?
I think so.
So I'm gonna
It's gonna come down to a lot of different things, I think.
yeah. I feel like I'm gonna give this one to Fusion. 3-1 or 3-2 though.
I'm gonna give it to him 3-1.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. Although New York have been known to do a 3-2 in Notre Dame.
Yeah, but
I
I think Philly's just too strong at this point.
yeah. All right, next game, 3-0.
Yep.
Last game in the East region. Last time this happened, the Spark 3-0 the Dragons, but the Dragons are on a tear at the moment. I'm not gonna predict against the Dragons again because I got
I
pretty
don't I
nervous
don't
that
think there's
time.
any signs of them slowing either, especially with only having Valiant this week.
Yeah. I feel like Spark still make this competitive every time they played the Dragons. It's been a 3-2.
I
So,
think Spark only take 1 though this time.
you think? Okay.
Yeah. I don't think they come out tired, but if our Preds are wrong and Excelsior do a take a 3-2 this week, I think that they're gonna take it against the Spark,
Okay.
and I think that's gonna tire the Spark out for the next day, and
Yeah.
I can't see them taking a second map off of Shanghai, especially with the way Shanghai's been rolling recently.
They've been speedrunning this East region.
Quite literally rolling as well.
Yep. So, moving on to our last set of games. First up, Atlanta Reign versus Boston Uprising. Now, both teams have looked very good. In our Preds, Atlanta will be the one with the win this weekend, and Boston are coming off of a rough 3-0.
Yeah.
Um, I think Atlanta take this one and they go 3-1 for the season for the stage. But I think this is another 3-1. I don't think Atlanta are the team to win 3-0, especially if they're going to be dropping a map to a Spitfire team who were just getting it together
Yeah.
against the Boston Uprising team who pretty much have their
Has it
synergy.
together.
Yeah.
I I could see Boston because I think something that people don't realize with Boston, even though they went 4-0 last cycle, they do tend to like to take a loss, and I think I said this especially too with Washington. They like to take a loss and ride that like wave of we need to get better and we need to do better the next day or the next week and kind of take that into their next game. So I could see them taking 2 maps here.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go 3-1 for mine.
I think I'm
Um,
gonna go 3-2, especially because a lot of these games have been very close
oh yeah.
this whole cycle.
Next, moving on, we have Toronto Defiant against Dallas Fuel. Um, I think this is it's hard. You don't want to predict
It's hard.
against Dallas, but Dallas haven't looked as good as they have been. Um, I don't
I
think
think this
Toronto will.
Toronto team though is a little bit weaker than a lot of teams they've been facing. I mean, besides I guess Florida.
Yeah,
But I think this Toronto team is a lot weaker than a lot of teams they've been facing, and I think Dallas hasn't really struggled against Toronto
yeah,
whenever they sort of come close to each other in matchups
and again, this is going to be played in. This is going to
in
be.
Dallas or in Houston.
Yeah, so there's still going to be Dallas fans there in front of the team. So
I
I'm
see a 3-0.
I am going to go 3-1.
Okay.
I think
I can
Toronto
see
took
that
map.
too because I think Toronto, like we've said, can take a control map and run with it.
All right, last game we have the Washington Justice going up against the LA Gladiators. I think Gladiators win this.
Yeah, I think this goes in Glad's favor.
I think after losing to Spitfire that the London Spitfire and giving them their first win, they're going to be in the dumps. And we've
If the
seen,
Preds go the right way, but yeah.
yeah, we're going with our narrative here.
Right.
So
So
if that happens, and we've seen what happens when Washington take a loss 1 week, they will go and lose. Probably both. I mean, they could win this, but I don't think they've looked good enough to win against the Gladiators.
I think they can take a map off of the Gladiators, but I think that's it.
Yeah. I mean, Gladiators have been known to they've been reverse swept and they've been 3-2. I think if the Paris Eternal can get 3 maps or 2 maps against the Gladiators, I think Washington can. I'm gonna go 3-2 to the Gladiators.
Okay. I think I'm gonna go 3-1.
All right, so we got some different ones this week. I think this is the first week in a long time, or but possibly the first week that we've been so split. We usually go for pretty much the same. Um,
Or just mirroring the yeah.
so it's gonna be interesting to see how this week goes. As you can see, I'm on 46 points so far. I think I'm ranked 6,000 in the leaderboards, which isn't bad.
We are currently tied
We on
in
46.
point. I'm on 46
Oh, that that's
because I had a really bad East region the first week and
and
a really bad I've had really bad East regions both weeks really.
and that fusion game really brought you back up on the double points.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you guys in the next video. And possibly, actually, no, we will see you for the bracket predictions for the Summer Showdown itself. So, bye!
Bye-bye.